It is said that girls with dreams become women with vision. May we empower each other to carry out such vision, because it isn't enough to simply talk about equality.
Firstly, let me start with the problem statement of femtech startups. First, gender bias in venture capital funding. Women-led startups are significantly less likely to receive venture capital funding. Only 2.3% of venture capital funded startups in the US in 2020 were women-led. Second, funding barriers for femtech startups. Investors often prefer companies with proven asset and intellectual property. This limits their ability to secure funding and scale internationally. Lastly, uneven global development of femtech. Most funding innovation have historically been concentrated in the US and Europe. These emerging markets are beginning to develop localized femtech solutions but still receive less attention and investment. Next, the urgency to conduct study. This study is important because although the femtech industry is growing rapidly, many startups still face major barriers that slow their growth. First, they experience funding barriers, where investors are less willing to invest in women's health technologies. Second, gender bias in investment decisions. This causes female founders to receive less funding compared to male founders, even when they have strong business potential. Third, there is low awareness of women's health issues, especially in Southeast Asia, which reduce the adoption of femtech products. Lastly, the international growth challenges, such as different healthcare regulations, cultural differences, and consumer preferences make it difficult for startups to expand globally. These issues show why this study is necessary to understand the factors affecting of the growth of femtech startups. Next, the key objectives of these studies are to determine the relationship between gender bias and the growth of femtech startups. Second, to determine the relationship between funding challenges and the international growth of femtech startups. And lastly, to determine the relationship between international growth challenges and the performance of femtech startups. Next, the literature review. It focuses into two key variables, which is the growth of femtech startups is the dependent variable, meanwhile the gender bias, funding challenges, and international growth challenges are the independent variable. First, the definition of the growth of femtech startups. Women-led startups are particularly influential in e-commerce, health tech, and financial services sectors, contributing to diversified product offerings and market growth. This defined by the Fariza and Said in 2025. Second, gender bias definition. Maria 2011 defined that gender bias refers to the unequal treatment or consideration of individuals based on their gender, often resulting from gender blindness and stereotype perceptions. The relationship between gender bias and the growth of femtech startups were defined by Tian in 2025 is femtech is not only a health innovation but also a site where datafication of intimate bodily experience may reinforce gender inequality. Third, funding challenges. Lower level of financial literacy is a particular challenge faced by many entrepreneurs from underrepresented and disadvantaged groups, as well as social entrepreneurs. This defined by the OECD and European Commissions in 2022. And the relationship between funding challenges and the growth of femtech startups are funding challenges may affect the growth of femtech startups because many companies struggle to secure the capital needed to scale their ability to meet the growing demand for. This defined by Katie in 2025. And lastly, international growth challenges. The challenges encountered in international business management are manifold and multifaceted. This defined by Idris in 2024. Lastly, the relationship between international growth challenges and the growth of femtech startups. This growing awareness has resulted in increased government grants and public health initiatives. This defined by Katarzyna and Lisa in 2024. This slide shows the purpose of theoretical framework of my study. The framework consists of three independent variables, which are gender bias, funding challenges, and international growth challenges. These three factors are expected to influence the performance of femtech startups, which is the dependent variable. Firstly, gender bias may reduce investment opportunities and support for women-led startups, affecting their business growth. Second, funding challenges limit startups' ability to develop products, conduct research, and expand into international markets. Finally, international growth challenges, such as different healthcare regulations, cultural differences, and consumer preferences can affect the overall performance and sustainability of femtech startups. Therefore, this framework purpose that these three factors have a significant relationship with the performance of femtech startups. Lastly, the conclusion of gender bias and international growth in femtech startups. Femtech startups still face major challenges. The femtech industry has strong potential to improve women's health and contribute to the global economy. However, many startups continue to face challenges such as gender bias, limited funding, and the difficulties in expanding into international markets. These barriers affect business growth, innovation, and overall performance. Second, there are growing opportunities. Despite these challenges, the demand for women health solution continues to increase. At the same time, awareness of gender inequality is also growing, creating more opportunities for femtech companies to develop innovative healthcare solutions. And lastly, goal for the future. In the future, stronger support for investor, policymaker, and healthcare professionals is needed. With better funding, fair investment opportunities, and supportive policies, femtech startups can overcome these barriers and achieve sustainable growth in both local and international markets.